Welcome back to Dark Horror Stories. In today's episode, I'm sharing 7 true disturbing stories from Illinois. These are tales of people who ventured into forgotten trails, empty river towns, and backroad woods and found something they were never meant to see. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Story 1. The thing about Illinois is people who don't live here think it's all flat and harmless. Like the scariest thing you'll run into is boredom and a Casey's pizza that tastes faintly like gasoline. But there are parts, especially downstate, where the land dips and folds in on itself. River bottoms, old timber, places where the corn gives up and the woods start, and suddenly you're not sure how far you are from anybody. This was late October, I'm pretty sure. It was cold enough that my truck's vents smelled like dust the first time I turned the heat on, and the cup holder was sticky from an old spilled energy drink I'd meant to clean up. I'd been putting off a weekend trip to my aunt's property near a little town outside of Hardin, one of those places where there's a single blinking light, a post office, and a bar that always looks closed until it is. My aunt, Darlene Rusk, didn't live there anymore. She de-inherited the place from my grandpa, and then it sort of drifted into being family land nobody wanted to deal with. A small cabin, a shed with a busted latch, and a stretch of timber that ran down toward the Illinois River. She called me on a Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, and said, "Can you go check it? The neighbor says the door's open again." Again, that was the first little itch under the skin. I didn't go because I'm brave. I went because I'm the kind of person who hates loose ends. Also because my aunt offered me $50 and told me I could keep whatever firewood was stacked in the shed. I remember stopping at a gas station on the way and buying beef jerky that was too peppery and one of those tiny bottled coffees that always tastes like melted plastic. I tossed a cheap flashlight in my cart too, like I was being responsible. The gravel road to the place is the kind that pings your undercarriage and coats your truck in pale dust. No cell service once you get past the last cluster of houses. The radio kept losing signal and switching to static, so I turned it off and just listened to my tires and the occasional crow. When I pulled up, the cabin looked normal in that sad, neglected way. The porch sagged on one corner. There was a plastic lawn chair on its side, half buried in leaves. Somebody, me last time, had stapled a tarp over one broken window, and it was flapping lightly, like it was breathing. And the front door really was open. Just a crack, maybe 2 inches, enough for the dark inside to show. I stood there longer than I want to admit. You know that feeling where you're telling yourself it's nothing, but your body hasn't signed off on that lie yet. My mouth went dry. I kept swallowing like I had a pill stuck in my throat. I told myself it was wind, old hinges, animals, teenagers, anything that was whatever my brain was gently suggesting. I called out, "Hello," like an idiot. Like someone breaking into an empty cabin is going to answer politely. No response, just that tarp ticking in the breeze. I stepped onto the porch. The boards complained under my boots. I noticed a stupid detail. Someone had left a single work glove on the top step, palm up like a little offering. It wasn't mine. It was too small. I nudged the door wider with my foot. The inside smelled wrong, not just stale air or mildew. There was a sweet, wet smell underneath it, like old apples gone soft in a bag. My flashlight beam caught dust floating in the air. The little kitchenette was exactly how I remembered. Cabinets that didn't quite close, a stained sink, a calendar still stuck on March from 2 years ago. I did the normal stuff first, checked the window with the tarp, looked for obvious signs of animals. I was talking to myself quietly the way you do when you want to hear a human voice, even if it's your own. Okay, cool, great, nothing's broken, mostly. Then I saw the footprints. They were in the dust on the living room floor, leading from the doorway toward the back of the cabin. Bare prints, not shoes, not socks. Toes splayed wide like whoever made them didn't wear shoes much, or like their feet weren't built for them. I crouched and held the flashlight closer. The dust had that gray, talc-like look, and the prints were deep in a way that didn't match the size. Like a child had stepped there but weighed more. I laughed once, sharp and fake. "Raccoon," I said out loud, even though it was the stupidest rationalization I'd made in years. Raccoons don't leave bare human footprints, but I didn't want to turn around yet because turning around meant admitting I was scared in an empty cabin in Illinois, and that just sounded ridiculous, so I followed them. The back room was basically a bedroom, a twin mattress with old floral sheets, a dresser my grandpa had built. My flashlight beam slid over it all, and for a second I thought nothing was wrong. Then the beam caught the closet door. It was shut, but not latched. It sat slightly crooked in its frame, like something had pushed it from the inside and it hadn't settled back right. I remember this very clearly. My hand hesitated over the knob. I could see the tiny chips in the brass where it had been hit over and over by someone's ring, maybe my grandpa's. I could hear my own breathing. And I could hear something else too. Something faint and rhythmic, like a fingernail tapping wood. Tap, tap, tap. I froze with my fingers on the knob. I told myself it was a branch against the siding or the tarp or the house settling. But the sound was too measured, too patient. Tap, tap, tap. And then it stopped. That was worse. I yanked the closet door open fast, like speed could make me safer. It was empty, just a hanging rod with two mismatched hangers and a cardboard box on the floor full of old VHS tapes. My flashlight beam shook a little and I felt stupid and relieved in the same breath. Then I heard it again, only this time it wasn't tapping. It was breathing, right behind me, not a deep breath, not a sigh, something thin, like a straw pulling air through mud. I turned too fast and banged my shoulder on the doorframe. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. The open front door showed gray daylight and dead leaves. Nothing moved except the tarp. I stood there with my flashlight up, heart hammering, trying to get my brain to latch onto something normal. Maybe I was hearing my own breath. Maybe the cabin had some weird draft. Maybe. A voice came from the living room. Soft, familiar, too close. "Jesse." My aunt's voice. Darlene S. It was so casual, so right that for one awful second my shoulders relaxed. My mind actually tried to rewrite reality to fit it. I took a step forward. Then the voice said it again, but wrong. "G.S." Stretched, like someone smiling while they talked, like they were tasting the word. I stopped dead. My skin prickled all over, not like goosebumps, more like a sunburn suddenly remembering it exists. "No," I said, and I didn't mean it like an argument. I meant it like a plea. The living room was still empty, but I could see the dust on the floor. A new footprint appeared, not stepping into the room, not from the doorway. It pressed down into the dust in the middle of the floor like an invisible thing had just put its weight there. Then another beside it. Then a third, closer to me. That's the detail people always ask about when I tell this. How can a footprint just appear? I don't know. I just watched the dust compress, like a finger pushing into flour. I backed up into the bedroom without meaning to. My heel caught the edge of the mattress and I stumbled. The flashlight beam jerked, and for a moment it landed on the ceiling. There were handprints up there, not smudges, not stains. Clear impressions in the dust and grime, palms flat, fingers spread, like someone had been walking upside down. I swear to you, that was the moment my brain finally stopped trying to be reasonable. There's no explanation that fits. My thoughts just turned into one clean sentence: get out. The closet door behind me creaked. I didn't look. I couldn't. Something moved in the hallway, quick, low, like a person crawling fast. The air got colder, and my nose filled with that sweet rotting smell again, stronger now, like someone had opened a bin of bad fruit. The voice came again, right outside the bedroom door. "Jesse, come here." It sounded almost bored, like it was calling a dog. I did the dumbest thing possible, but it worked. I threw my flashlight, not at the voice at the living room window, the tarp-covered one. The flashlight hit the glass hard enough that it popped what was left of it and tore the tarp down with a sound like ripping cloth. Cold daylight poured in. The room brightened, and I saw it, not fully, just enough. A shape in the hallway, low to the ground. It was on all fours, but not like an animal. Like a person who'd forgotten how legs work. Its back arched too high. Its arms were too long, elbows bending the wrong way, and its hands, I can't get the hands out of my head. They were turned backward, palms facing up as it crawled, fingers hooking into the floor like it was climbing. And its face, God. Its face was pressed sideways against the wall, cheek flattened, like it was listening through the drywall. No eyes that I could see, just smooth skin where eyes should have been, and a mouth stretched along the wrong part of its head. When it spoke, the wall muffled it a little, like it was talking from inside the plaster. It jerked toward the broken window, fast, not lunging at me, reacting to the light. That gave me half a second. I scrambled through the torn tarp opening like a raccoon fleeing a trash can. The edge of the broken frame sliced my jacket. I landed hard in the leaves, rolled, and came up with my niece screaming. I didn't run to my truck right away. I ran around the side of the cabin because my brain decided if it followed, I didn't want it between me and the road. I remember grabbing at saplings, tearing my hands up, not caring. I remember the smell of river mud. I remember hearing something inside the cabin slam once, like a body hitting a wall. When I reached the front, my truck was there, faithful and ordinary, like it didn't belong in the same world as the cabin. The front door of the cabin was no longer open, it was shut, and there were fresh scratches in the wood around the knob, thin, shallow grooves like someone had dragged nails across it while closing it from the inside. I fumbled my keys so bad I dropped them twice. I got in, locked the doors, and turned the ignition. The engine clicked, once, twice. I actually whispered, "Please," like the truck could hear me. It started on the third try, coughing dust out of the exhaust. As I backed down the gravel drive, my tires spun in the leaves, and for one horrifying second I thought I wouldn't get traction. Then the truck caught and lurched forward. I looked in the rearview mirror one time. I didn't see it standing in the doorway or waving or anything dramatic. What I saw was worse in its own quiet way. The torn tarp I'd ripped down was now hanging again over the window. Neat, stapled back in place, like someone had fixed it while I was still in the driveway. I drove until I hit cell service, pulled over, and threw up on the shoulder. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't hold my phone steady. When I called my aunt, I tried to sound calm and I failed. She thought I'd found squatters. She wanted to call the sheriff. I told her no. I told her to sell the place, burn it, salt it, I don't know. I was babbling. She didn't sell it. She still hasn't. People don't do the sensible thing with family land. They just avoid it. Here's the part that keeps me from filing it away as a panic attack or a weird imagination spiral. 2 days later, I realized my jacket was still torn and I went to hang it up. That's when I found something in the inner pocket, something I didn't put there. A VHS tape, no label, just a strip of masking tape with one word written in faded marker. Jesse. And my handwriting, my actual handwriting, is messy and slanted. This was clean, careful, like someone copying it. I threw the tape away. Not in my trash, at a gas station, in one of those bins that gets emptied into a bigger dumpster. I didn't want it near my house. Sometimes, though, when my TV flickers for no reason, I think about that tape sitting somewhere under layers of garbage, waiting for someone curious to find it. And I still don't like hearing my name said softly from another room, even by people I trust. Story 2. There's a stretch of Illinois up near the Wisconsin line where the towns feel like they were set down carefully and then forgotten. Old brick storefronts, little parks with war memorials, streets that go dead quiet after 8. I was up near Capron, kind of out in Boone County, because my friend Leela Van Houten had this idea that we should do a fall photo day. You know, Cute sweaters, coffee, cornfields, the whole Instagram thing. I didn't want to go. I'd had a long week. My sinuses were acting up, and my car smelled like the onion bagel I'd eaten 2 mornings ago. But Leela could talk you into anything with this bright, relentless cheer. So I met her at a diner that served pancakes the size of hubcaps, and we drove out with her camera bag in the backseat and a bag of mini powdered donuts between us. She had a location pinned, a little abandoned church off a county road, not a famous one, not the kind with tourists, just something she'd found on a forum where people share aesthetic ruins. The sky was low and white, and the corn stubble in the fields looked like a million broken toothpicks. We passed a mailbox with no house near it, just a line of trees behind it like a wall. Leela slowed down and pointed. That's it. It wasn't a church the way you picture one, more like a small chapel. Clapboard siding, steeple leaning slightly, windows boarded except one stained glass panel still intact. The yard was a mess of knee-high weeds and last year's leaves. I remember noticing a swing set behind it, rusted, with one swing missing. Just the chains left, clicking in the wind. That sound, metal on metal, kept happening in little bursts, and every time it did, I flinched like it was someone clearing their throat. We parked on the shoulder, no other cars, no houses close enough to see, just fields and that strip of trees like an old bruise on the horizon. We walked up, crunching through leaves. Leela was talking about aperture and how she wanted moody shots, and I was half listening, half watching the boards on the windows because I kept expecting a raccoon face to appear. The front doors were chained, but the chain was loose, hanging like someone had unhooked it and then changed their mind. The side door, though, the one that probably used to be for choir practice or whatever, was ajar. I told myself it was kids, wind, animals, the usual. Inside, it smelled like wet paper and old wood. The pews were still there, crooked, some shoved aside like someone had tried to make space. There were hymnals scattered on the floor, pages swollen and stuck together. Leela stepped carefully, camera already up, whispering excitedly like we were in a museum. I noticed something mundane and stupid. There was a plastic baby doll head on the altar, no body, just the head face down, hair matted with dirt. Somebody had drawn a single black line down its scalp like a part. Gross, I muttered. Leela laughed. It's perfect. That's when I saw the mirrors. They were propped against the walls between the boarded windows, not church mirrors, household mirrors, different sizes, different frames, some cracked, some fogged, all angled inward like the room had been turned into a weird funhouse. I stopped walking, my stomach tightened. Did you bring those? I asked, even though I knew she hadn't. Leela lowered her camera. No, that's weird. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone staged it for photos. Maybe teens were doing some creepy art project. But the arrangement was too deliberate. Every mirror faced the center aisle, reflecting the altar, and none of them reflected us. At first I thought it was just the angles. I stepped to the side, waved my hand in front of one. In the glass I saw the pews behind me, the damp floor, the gray light from the open door. But where my hand should have been there was nothing, just empty air. My skin went hot, like embarrassment and fear mixed together. Okay, I said, forcing a laugh. It's some kind of trick mirror. Like those old ones that, I don't know, warped the image. Leela didn't answer. She was staring at the biggest mirror, the one leaned against the wall near the altar. It was tall enough to show a person head to toe. The frame was carved wood with leaves and little faces, and it looked expensive, out of place. In that mirror, something moved, not behind us, in the reflection itself. Like the mirror had a depth the room didn't. A figure passed between the pews in the glass, smooth as smoke. Leela lifted her camera automatically and snapped a picture. The shutter sound was loud in the quiet. The moment she did, every mirror in the room breathed. That's the only word I have for it. The glass fogged, then cleared like lungs exhaling. A thin film of condensation spread from the center outward. And then a sound started, not from outside, not from the door, from the mirrors, whispering. Not words I could understand, but the rhythm of speech, overlapping, urgent, like a crowd talking all at once. It made my ears ache. Leela pressed her hands over her ears and made a noise like she was trying not to cry. I grabbed her wrist. "We're leaving." We backed toward the side door. The whispering swelled, and in the biggest mirror the figure stopped. It turned its head toward us, except its head didn't turn like a person's. It rotated slowly, too smooth, like it was mounted on a lazy Susan. Its face came into view. It was Leela's face, not like a shapeshifter reveal, not dramatic. Just Leela's face, expression blank, eyes slightly unfocused, mouth parted, but the skin looked wrong, too reflective, like it was painted onto glass. Leela made this small choking sound, and I felt her fingers dig into my arm hard enough to hurt. The mirror, Leela lifted a hand and pressed it against the inside of the glass, palm out. On our side of the mirror, a wet handprint bloomed in the same spot. Not condensation, actual moisture, thick and slightly yellow, running down in slow drips. That's when I lost it. I yanked Leela hard and we ran. We didn't run down the aisle. Instinct pulled us toward the open side door. My shoulder clipped a pew and I felt splinters bite through my sweater. Behind us, the whispering turned into something else, sharper, more coordinated, like a choir hitting a note. We burst out into daylight. Cold air slapped my face. I kept running into the weeds, dragging Leela until we hit the edge of the road. We got in the car. Leela slammed the lock button over and over like that mattered. Her breathing came in ragged little huffs. I turned the key. The car started, thank God, but as we pulled away, Leela twisted in her seat and looked back. "Stop," she said, voice flat. "What?" I snapped, already accelerating. "My camera," she said. "I left it." "No," I said. "Nope. She blinked hard like she was waking up. "It's my dad's. I can't." I didn't want to go back. I still don't know why I did, except that guilt is a lever people can use on you even when you're terrified. I swung the car around and pulled onto the shoulder again, farther from the chapel. "I'll go," I said. "You stay here, doors locked." I didn't wait for her to argue. I ran back, heart punching my ribs. The chapel looked the same from the outside, quiet, harmless, weeds moving in the wind. The side door was still open. I stepped inside just enough to see. The mirrors were gone, every single one. The walls were bare except for dust outlines where frames had leaned. The altar was empty except for the doll head, still face down. And in the center aisle, right where the mirrors had been facing, Leela's camera sat on the floor like it had been placed there carefully. Strap coiled neatly beside it. I scooped it up without thinking. The camera felt cold, like it had been in a freezer. I ran back out, not looking at the altar again. In the car, Leela clutched the camera to her chest like a stuffed animal. We didn't talk much on the drive back. When we did, it was about dumb things, what we should eat for dinner, whether it might snow soon, like we could paper over what happened. That night, Leela texted me a single photo. It was the shot she'd taken in the chapel. The image showed the biggest mirror, and in it the aisle behind us. There we were, me and Leela, standing in the doorway. But we were facing the wrong direction. In the photo, our backs were to the camera, our faces were turned toward the altar, and Leela's reflection was smiling so wide it pulled the corners of her mouth up into her cheeks like the skin might tear. Leela deleted the photo. She says she did anyway. But sometimes when she scrolls her camera roll too fast, she swears it flashes there for half a second like a thumbnail that shouldn't exist. We don't take photo days anymore. Story 3. I've done a lot of delivery driving in my life. The kind that takes you out past the last streetlight and into those stretches of Illinois where the road is 2 lanes and the ditches are deep enough to swallow a car. This was when I was working for a medical supply company. Nothing dramatic, just boxes of gloves and paper products and stuff like that. I had a route that dipped down near Cairo once a week, and I hated it. Not because of the town itself, more because everything around it feels waterlogged and old, like the land is still deciding whether it wants to be land or river. One day my dispatcher, Maura Klein, called and asked if I could take a shortcut back up toward Ulin because a bridge was out. She texted me a pin and said, "It's a county road, you'll be fine." County road in southern Illinois can mean a lot of things. The shortcut turned into gravel, then into a narrow strip of pavement with weeds poking through cracks. Trees leaned in overhead and the light changed. My GPS kept rerouting like it couldn't commit. The air smelled like wet leaves and stagnant water. I remember noticing the little details because I was bored and annoyed. The dash clock was 15 minutes slow. My thermos lead squeaked every time I took a sip. A spider had built a web in the corner of my driver's side mirror, and I kept meaning to wipe it off but never did. Then I saw the road sign. It wasn't a normal sign. It was a piece of plywood nailed to a post with red paint on it. 2 words, "Turn back." No punctuation, just that. I slowed down, laughed once under my breath because people put signs like that up to scare teens or to keep hunters off their property. I told myself it was somebody's idea of a joke. I kept driving. The pavement ended completely. Now it was packed dirt with twin ruts like something heavy used it sometimes. My van rocked and boxes in the back shifted. Then the woods opened into a low clearing and there was an old concrete structure half sunk in the ground, like a bunker or a storm shelter that had been abandoned. Beside it was a culvert pipe sticking out of a mound of earth, big enough for a person to crawl through. Water dripped from it in slow, steady drops, and there were shoes lined up in the grass. That's the iconic thing I can't shake. A neat row of shoes, men's, women's, kids, all pointed toward the culvert like they were waiting for their owners to come back out. Mud caked on the soles, laces tied, no footprints leading away, just shoes. I stopped the van without meaning to, put it in park, sat there gripping the steering wheel. Rationalizations poured in, desperate and stupid. Maybe it was trash, maybe it was a prank, maybe someone dumped them, but they were too neat, too intentional. I should have turned around right there, I know that. I can say it now, from the comfort of a normal room with normal walls. Back then, I was thinking about the delivery schedule, about how my boss would chew me out if I was late, about how turning around would mean admitting I'd gotten spooked by a sign. So I got out of the van. The air in the clearing was colder. It had that damp underground smell. The dripping from the culvert was louder up close, like a slow clock. I walked toward the shoes, trying not to step in the mud. I saw a tiny sneaker with a cartoon dinosaur on it and felt this sudden, sharp nausea. From inside the culvert, a voice said very quietly, "Hey." I whipped my head toward it. "Hello," I called, and my voice sounded wrong out there, swallowed by trees. "Hey," the voice said again. It was a man's voice, calm, almost friendly, like someone calling you over at a barbecue. I leaned closer stupidly because my brain decided, oh, it's a person, someone stuck, someone needs help. The darkness inside the pipe was complete. My eyes couldn't adjust. "What's going on?" I asked. "Are you okay?" There was a pause, like the voice was considering. Then it said in my voice, exactly my tone, "Are you okay?" My stomach dropped so hard it felt like my organs shifted. I backed away, almost tripping over the shoes. The voice chuckled, not a laugh, more like a little exhale of amusement, and then the dripping stopped. Silence. Something moved inside the pipe, not crawling out, moving toward the opening, slow and deliberate. I saw a faint change in the darkness, like a shape blocking what little light was there. I fumbled for my phone, even though I had no service. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped it in the mud. From the culvert, the voice whispered again, soft and coaxing, "Come closer." It wasn't my voice that time. It was my mother's. I hadn't heard my mother's voice in years. She's alive, just not in my life. But the sound hit some buried reflex. My throat tightened. I took one step forward before I caught myself. And that's when it happened. This is the second thing people latch onto when I tell it. A hand slid out of the culvert and rested on the grass. Not reaching, not grabbing, just resting there like it was testing the surface. It was a human hand in shape, but the skin looked like pale river clay. Too smooth, no veins, no wrinkles. The fingers were too long and the nails weren't nails. They were thin, translucent sheets like dried onion skin. The hand flexed once slowly, and the grass beneath it browned instantly like it had been burned with frost. I ran, not heroic running. I stumbled back to the van, slammed the door, locked it, and started the engine. My foot shook on the gas. In the side mirror, my spiderweb trembled. The van lurched forward, tires spitting mud, and I drove around the clearing without even trying to stay on the ruts. Branches scraped the sides. Boxes slammed in the back. I hit the main road again and kept going, not stopping until I reached a gas station with people in it. I parked under bright lights and sat there breathing like I'd just surfaced from deep water. The aftermath proof happened the next morning. I was unloading the van, trying to pretend the whole thing never happened, when I found something in the back wedged between two boxes. A child's sneaker. Small, muddy. Dinosaur on the side. The same one I'd seen in that row of shoes. I stood there staring at it, waiting for my brain to offer an explanation. Maybe it had been in the van already. Maybe. But no, my van gets cleaned out every day, and the mud on it was wet, fresh, like it had just been pulled from the ground. I threw it away too, far away, but it didn't make me feel better, because now I knew for sure that whatever was in that culvert had hands, and it understood what a road is. And it understood how to leave things where you'll find them later. Story 4. When my buddy Soren Halberg texted me about a cheap cabin rental near Starved Rock, I said yes too fast. I hadn't taken time off in months, and the idea of a couple nights with no emails sounded like medicine. The listing photos were all warm lighting and clean quilts. The kind of place where you drink tea and pretend you're the kind of person who owns hiking boots that aren't from Walmart. We drove down in his Subaru with a cooler full of sandwiches and a bag of those stupidly expensive trail mixes that are mostly raisins. It was late afternoon, gray sky, the trees stripped down to bone. I remember Soren had a playlist of old punk songs, and every time we hit a pothole the bass made the rearview mirror buzz. The cabin was actually more like a converted hunting shack, tucked behind a stand of pines off a dirt access road. No other rentals nearby. No neighbors. Just woods and a shallow ravine behind it. It looked fine at first, clean enough. The porch light worked. The lockbox code worked. Inside, it smelled like lemon cleaner and old smoke, like someone had tried to erase the past, but it was still faintly there. We did normal cabin stuff. Unpacked, argued about whether the thermostat was lying. Soren tried to start a fire and failed twice before I took over. The first log I put in hissed like it was damp even though it looked dry. Before it got fully dark, we went for a short walk down toward the ravine. There was a narrow footpath, maybe made by deer, maybe by people. The ground was soft with needles. Here's a mundane detail that matters only because it's stuck in my head. There was a single orange traffic cone sitting in the woods about 10 feet off the path. No road nearby, no construction, just a cone faded and cracked like the forest had claimed it. Soren joked, "Illinois Bigfoot OSHA Department." I laughed. I wasn't scared yet, but I also wasn't relaxed. We headed back as the light fell, and that's when we heard the knocking. It came from deeper in the ravine, 3 knocks evenly spaced, not a woodpecker, not random, like someone tapping on a door. Soren stopped walking. "You hear that?" "Yeah," I said, and immediately, "Probably someone camping down there." Rationalization, automatic, 3 knocks again. We waited. The woods held its breath. Then, faintly, a 4th knock closer. Soren looked at me like he wanted to make it a dare. I shook my head. Nope, we're not doing that. Back at the cabin, we bolted the door more out of habit than fear. We ate sandwiches at the tiny table. The overhead light flickered once and steadied. Soren told a story about getting lost as a kid in Minnesota, and I found myself not laughing as much as I should. Around midnight, I woke up because I had to pee. The cabin was cold, the fire dead. Soren was snoring on the couch. I sat up and listened. The knocking was back, not in the ravine now, on the cabin wall. 3 knocks right outside the bedroom window. I lay there, heart thumping, trying to decide if I was dreaming. I told myself it was branches, but there weren't branches that close, and the knocks came again, slightly lower, like something had moved down the wall. I got up, went to the kitchen, and grabbed the flashlight. The beam made the cabin feel smaller, corners darker. I nudged Soren awake. Hey, he blinked, annoyed. What? Listen. 3 knocks, his face changed. He sat up straighter. Okay, he whispered. Okay, it's probably a deer. Deer don't knock. We stood by the window, not looking out yet, like looking would make it real. When I finally pulled the curtain back, the flashlight beam hit the glass and bounced, blinding me for a second. Outside in the yard, something stood near the tree line. It wasn't close enough to see clearly, and that's almost worse. My brain kept trying to make it into a person, then an animal, then a shadow. Then it stepped forward into the porch light. It was shaped like a man wearing a deer carcass, wrong. Not antlers as a crown, antlers jutting from its shoulders, like bones had grown where arms should be. Its head was too small, tucked down, and its neck was a long, corded stalk. The legs were human legs until the knees, and then they bent backward into something else. It lifted one arm, one of those shoulder antler arms, and tapped the side of the cabin with the tip of the antler. Knock, knock, knock. Each knock made a tiny vibration in the glass. I could feel it through the window frame. Soren whispered, "Don't open the door." "No kidding," I whispered back. The thing tilted its head, but not toward the window, toward the sound of our voices, like it could locate us by the way air moved. Then very slowly it walked to the front door. The knob jiggled once, then again. Then the jiggling turned into a steady, careful twist, like it understood how doors work but hadn't used one in a while. Soren backed up, grabbed his car keys off the counter with shaking hands. I did the same mental math you do in emergencies. How fast can we get to the car? Will it start? Can it run? The knob stopped moving. For 3 seconds, everything was silent. Then something scraped along the porch boards right outside the door like a claw or bone dragging. I moved to the peephole without thinking, then stopped. Something in me screamed not to look. Soren did it instead. He leaned in, and then he jerked back so hard he hit the wall. "What?" I hissed. His eyes were wide, glossy. He swallowed. "It's facing away, but it's smiling." That didn't make sense, and I hated that it didn't. We didn't stay. We grabbed our jackets, forgot half our stuff, and ran out the back door into the woods because the front door felt like a trap. The air outside was brutal and cold. My lungs burned. We crashed through undergrowth toward the car, using the porch light as a reference until we lost it. That's when I realized the woods were arranged. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean the trees we'd walked past earlier were no longer where they were supposed to be. The path wasn't there. The orange traffic cone was gone. The ravine should have been to our right, but the ground sloped wrong. We were running in a place that looked like the place, but wasn't. Soren grabbed my arm. "Stop." We stopped, listened. From behind us in the dark came 3 knocks, not on wood, on something hollow. Knock, knock, knock. Then another set farther away answered, knock, 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 like call and response, multiple. My stomach turned to water. We didn't run blindly after that. We did something smarter. We followed the sound of the highway, not the knocks, not the cabin, the highway. We moved low, quiet, stumbling, freezing whenever the knocks came closer. Eventually we hit a ditch, then a road, then the blessed, ordinary whoosh of passing cars. We flagged one down like idiots. A woman in a minivan stopped. Her name was Zainab Parik, and she looked at us like we were escaped patients, but she let us in because we were shaking and bleeding and it was 2 in the morning. We didn't tell her the truth. We said we got lost hiking, and our cabin rental was unsafe. The aftermath proof came later after sunlight when we went back with a park ranger, whose name I won't use because I don't want him dragged into this. The cabin was still there. Quiet, normal, the front door was intact, but the porch boards right in front of it had 3 deep gouges carved into them, parallel grooves, each one the width of an antler tip, and between those grooves, pressed into the wood like a brand, was a perfect smile shape, not teeth marks, not scratches, just the impression of a grin, as if someone had pressed a smiling face hard against the boards until it left its shape behind. Story 5. I grew up near Quincy, and if you've ever been there, you know the river air gets into everything. Clothes, hair, the inside of your car. It's not unpleasant exactly, it just feels like you're always a little damp, like the world is sweating. My cousin Maribel Ochoa and I used to explore the woods behind our grandparents' place when we were kids. We'd hunt for frogs in the creek, dare each other to step on rotten logs, pretend we were survival experts because we watched one episode of some outdoor show. When our grandpa died, the place sat empty a while. Then my grandma decided she wanted to sell, and suddenly the family was scrambling to clean it out. Maribel and I drew the short straw because we were young and able-bodied, which is family code for easy to guilt. We went out on a Saturday morning with trash bags, cleaning supplies, and the kind of determination you only have when you think a task will take 2 hours and it actually takes 8. The house itself was fine, dusty, smelling like old perfume and wood polish. The real mess was the outbuildings, shed, chicken coop, the little storm cellar door out behind the lilac bushes. I'd forgotten about the storm cellar. It was one of those heavy metal doors set into the ground, 2 halves that open like a mouth. As a kid, I thought it was cool. As an adult, it just looked like a place for spiders to thrive. Maribel pointed at it with her gloved hand. We should check it. I didn't want to. My coffee was already cold and my jeans had that itchy, stiff feeling from being air-dried, but I nodded because I didn't want to be the one who chickened out. The doors were heavier than I remembered. We heaved them open and damp air rolled out, carrying the smell of earth and something metallic like pennies. The concrete steps down were slick. Maribel went first, flashlight in hand, chattering to keep herself brave. I followed, trying not to picture mice or snakes. Down there it was just a storm cellar. Shelves, old jars, a broken lawn chair, canning supplies, mundane. Then we saw the chalk. On the far wall, someone had drawn lines, tall vertical strokes like tally marks, hundreds of them. They covered the wall from waist height up to the ceiling. Maribel frowned. Did Grandpa do that? I tried to laugh. Why would Grandpa keep tally marks in the storm cellar? Maybe it was kids, maybe it was some old habit. I wanted it to be something normal. Maribel stepped closer, shining her flashlight along the wall. The chalk lines weren't random. They were grouped in sets of 5 like counting days, but the chalk itself looked fresh, too bright, like it had been drawn recently. Maribel reached out, touched one of the lines, and her fingertip came away wet, not chalk dust, wetness. The line started to run. It wasn't chalk. It was something else, smeared on the wall in a chalk-like color, and the dampness in the cellar was making it bleed downward in thin rivulets. Maribel wiped her finger on her jeans fast, face twisting. Okay, nope. We turned to leave, and that's when we heard the footsteps above us, on the ground outside. Slow, heavy steps circling the cellar doors. Maribel froze halfway up the stairs, light shaking. "Grandma," she called, even though Grandma wasn't supposed to be there. No answer. The footsteps stopped directly above the cellar opening. A shadow fell over the stairwell, blocking what little daylight came in. Then a voice drifted down, soft and sweet. "Maribel." Not my voice, not her voice, our grandmother's voice. Maribel's whole body went tight, her hand gripped the stair rail. "Abuela." I grabbed her elbow. "No," the voice said again, slightly wrong, like someone shaping it. "Maribel, come up, it's okay." I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Grandma had surprised us, maybe she'd come by and we didn't hear her car. But the voice didn't match the timing of speech, if that makes sense. It sounded recorded, played back through a bad speaker. Maribel took one step up, and from the darkness behind us in the cellar, something whispered my name, just once, close enough that I felt breath on my neck. I spun, flashlight beam whipping across shelves. Nothing, but a jar on the shelf tipped over by itself and rolled to the edge, pausing there like it was considering whether to fall. Inside the jar was something pale and curled. I couldn't tell if it was a preserved vegetable or something else. The jar dropped. It shattered on the floor, glass exploding, and the pale thing inside slapped wetly onto the concrete. It was a tongue, not a human tongue. Too long, too thin, ending in a fork like a snake. It twitched once, then lay still. Maribel screamed. I dragged her up the steps and we burst out into daylight, slamming the cellar doors shut behind us. The footsteps were gone. The yard was empty, lilacs moving in the wind, everything ordinary. Maribel was sobbing, wiping her face with the back of her glove. "Did you see?" "I saw," I said, voice shaking. "I saw." We didn't open the cellar again. We stacked heavy patio stones on top of the doors like that meant something. The aftermath proof came when we were cleaning out the kitchen later. Maribel went to wash her hands and she screamed again. On her index finger where she touched the chalk line, there was a faint white stain that wouldn't wash off. Not chalk, not paint. It looked like the skin itself had been bleached in a perfect line. It stayed there for weeks, fading slowly like a scar. Maribel still has a faint mark there, like a reminder. And she refuses to go near storm cellar doors now, even in daylight. Story 6. I got stranded outside of a town called Arcola once because my car decided to have a crisis on the side of a farm road at the worst possible time. It was summer, one of those sticky Illinois evenings where the air feels thick enough to chew, and the corn is so tall it makes you feel like you're driving through a hallway. I'd been coming back from visiting my friend Keiko Matsuda in Champaign. We'd had takeout ramen that went soggy in the bowls, and we'd watched some dumb reality show. I left too late because I didn't want to drive in the dark, but then I did anyway because I'm bad at planning. My car, a little sedan that always made a squealing noise when I turned left, started sputtering and coughing, and then the dashboard lit up like Christmas. I coasted onto the shoulder, killed the engine, and sat there listening to it tick. No cell service, of course. I got out, popped the hood, stared at the engine like I could intimidate it into working. I know nothing about cars. The only thing I accomplished was getting sweat in my eyes. The sun was low, throwing long shadows through the corn. The road was empty, straight as a ruler. Then I heard a sound from the field. Not rustling, not birds. A slow, steady clap. Clap, hit, clap, clap. I turned, scanning the corn. "Hello," I called. The clapping stopped. I told myself it was kids, or someone in the field, or some weird farm equipment noise, but it sounded like hands. I grabbed my phone and tried to get a bar of service by holding it up like a divining rod. Nothing. The clapping started again, closer this time, coming from the corn directly across the ditch. clap, clap, clap. And then between the stalks, I saw something pale move, just a sliver. I backed up against my car, heart thumping. "Hey," I said louder, "I'm just broken down. I'm not messing with anything." The clapping stopped. A voice came from the corn, cheerful and bright. "Need help?" A man's voice, normal enough, helpful. Relief washed through me so hard I almost laughed. "Yes," I said. "Yes, thank you, my car." Then the voice continued, still cheerful, but the words didn't match what you'd say. "Need help, need help, need help." Like a parrot, like someone repeating a phrase they'd learned. My relief snapped into something else. I didn't answer. The corn rustled and a figure emerged. It looked like a man at first. Overalls, a baseball cap, boots. But as it stepped into the open, I saw the wrongness. The overalls weren't cloth. They were stitched together from strips of something that looked like dried corn husk, layered and braided. The cap sat too high because its head was too tall, tapering upward like a cob. And its face was smooth and pale and featureless, except for a mouth that had been carved in, a thin horizontal slit. No nose, no eyes, just that mouth. It lifted its hands and clapped again slowly as if demonstrating. The sound was wet, like hands slapping raw meat. Clap, clap, clap. I couldn't move. My legs felt like they'd been filled with sand. It spoke again. The mouth slit opened and the sound came out wrong like wind through a flute. "Need help?" I forced myself to swallow. "No," I whispered. "No, I'm okay." It tilted its head. Then it stepped closer, and I realized its boots weren't boots. They were hooves shoved into boot shapes, splitting the leather. I did the only thing I could think of. I got back in my car, locked the doors, and tried the ignition again and again and again. The engine sputtered once like it was laughing at me. Outside, the thing walked toward my driver's side window. Its steps were slow, confident. It leaned down and the smooth face pressed against the glass. The mouth slit opened wider than it should, stretching, and a sound came out, clapping, but from inside its mouth, like hands applauding behind teeth. Clap, clap, clap. My vision tunneled. My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. And then, miracle or timing or pure dumb luck, the engine caught. I slammed it into drive and peeled out, gravel spraying. In the rearview mirror, the thing stood in the road watching me go. It didn't chase, it just clapped slowly as I disappeared. The aftermath proof hit me the next day when I went to clean my windshield. There were handprints on the outside of the driver's side window, but not normal handprints. Each finger was too long, and the prints ended in little crescent gouges in the glass itself, like the tips had been sharp enough to score it. I couldn't polish them out. They're still there if you catch the light right, 5 faint scratches that look like someone trying to get in. Story 7. There's a town in Illinois called Nauvoo that looks like it belongs on a postcard. Old houses, quiet streets, the river close enough that you can smell it. I went there in early spring a few years ago because my coworker, Bennett Soriana, kept talking about how peaceful it was, how it felt like stepping back in time. I wanted peaceful. My apartment in Peoria had thin walls, and my upstairs neighbor had a dog that barked like it hated existence. I booked a cheap little room at a bed and breakfast and drove down on a Friday with a duffel bag and a bag of pretzels that left salt on my steering wheel. It was drizzling when I arrived, the kind of rain that doesn't fall so much as hang in the air. The river looked like dull metal. The B&B owner, a woman named Eloine Braddock, gave me a key and directions to a breakfast nook and talked too long about local history. I nodded politely, pretending to be interested, mostly thinking about a hot shower. That night I went for a walk along a trail that ran near the river. I had a hood up, hands in pockets, enjoying the way the town lights blurred in the mist. Halfway down the trail, I noticed a lamppost that didn't match the others. The others were black modern. This one was old, green, ornate, and it wasn't lit. Under it, someone had placed a chair. A wooden dining chair, wet from rain, facing the river like it was waiting for someone to sit and watch. I told myself it was some local art thing or teens messing around, but my skin prickled anyway. I kept walking. The trail bent slightly and the town fell behind me. The river widened. The sound of water against the bank became the main noise. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Not fast, not trying to catch up, just matching mine. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I started again. The footsteps started again. I laughed once nervously and called, "Hey, you okay back there?" Like I was the one in control. No answer. I turned around. The trail behind me was empty, mist and lamplight. The chair under the unlit lamppost sat there like a bad idea. I told myself the footsteps were mine, echoing weird, or gravel shifting. I turned forward again. And then a voice whispered from right beside my ear, warm and intimate. "Don't look." My whole body jolted. I spun, but there was nothing there, no one, just fog. I walked faster, trying to get back toward town. The trail felt longer now, the mist thicker. The river sounded louder, like it was leaning in. The chair appeared again ahead of me, the same chair, but I hadn't turned around, I hadn't looped. I knew the trail was straight. I stopped dead, staring at it. The chair was positioned dead center on the path now, blocking it like a barrier. A rational part of me tried to argue, maybe there are multiple chairs, multiple lampposts, but it was the same chipped slat on the back, the same dark knot in the wood like an eye. I stepped off the trail to go around it. The ground beside the path was soft and muddy, and my shoe sank. I stumbled, caught myself on a tree trunk, and felt something carved into it. Letters deep in the bark. "Don't look." My throat tightened. I backed away, wiping my hand on my jeans like the bark was dirty. From the river, a sound rose, a wet dragging like something being pulled through shallow water toward shore. I didn't want to look. I wanted to look. I felt split down the middle. I kept walking, hugging the path edge, eyes on the ground. The chair scraped, not from wind, from movement. It slid across the wet gravel behind me, slow, deliberate, like someone unseen was dragging it to follow. SCRR rape. SCRR rape. My heart hammered. I broke into a jog, then a run, breath tearing in my throat. The scraping kept pace. Then ahead the trail ended at a small overlook area, benches, a railing, a view of the river, no one there. The town lights distant. I reached the railing, panting, and realized with a sick drop that I'd run into a dead end. The scraping stopped behind me. I stood there, hunched, hands on knees, trying to think. My brain offered stupid solutions. Jump the railing, climb down, call for help. No cell service again, of course. A chair leg tapped the gravel once. Tap, I froze. Something brushed my shoulder, light as a fingertip, and the voice whispered again, closer than breath. "Don't look." I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't know what else to do. Tears sprang up, hot and humiliating. Behind me I heard the wet dragging from the river stop. Silence settled heavy. Then something sat down in the chair. The wood creaked under weight, and I heard breathing, slow, patient, satisfied. I stood there with my eyes closed, trembling while it breathed behind me. Minutes passed, or seconds. My sense of time got weird, like my mind refused to mark it. Then the chair scraped again, closer. I made a decision. I still don't know if it was brave or just animal panic. I climbed over the railing without looking back and dropped down the slope toward the riverbank. I slid on mud, caught myself on roots, tore my palms. Cold water soaked my shoes. The river smell hit me, sharp and alive. I didn't look behind me. I kept telling myself, don't look, don't look, don't look. I followed the riverbank toward town, stumbling, soaked, until I hit a stretch where the trail came down closer to the water. Lights appeared through trees. I could hear distant traffic. When I finally dared to look back, there was nothing on the riverbank, just fog and water. I got back to the B&B shaking so hard low and asked if I was sick. I lied and said I slipped by the river. The aftermath proof came the next morning when I went to leave. My shoes were muddy, my jeans stained, my hands scratched up. On my jacket shoulder, right where I'd felt that brush, there was a print, not a handprint, not fingers. a perfect oval slightly raised like a suction mark, and around the oval faint little lines radiating outward like the impression of something with many tiny ridges pressed gently into the fabric. It didn't wash out. It faded over weeks, but it stayed long enough to make me feel watched every time I put that jacket on. I don't go walking near rivers at night anymore, not in Illinois, not anywhere. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments which story unsettled you most, and share this with your friends who love a good scare. Until next time, stay safe out there.